Hey guys, just out here living that fantasy life on behalf of RosterWatch Nation. I want to give you a little recap of Los Angeles Rams training camp practice. A few things definitely stand out over there. I mean, first and foremost, Matt Stafford still having some pain in his throwing arm, and he's had a very light workload this offseason. They're managing him in camp so far. I mean, they tend to think he's going to be ready for the beginning of the season without issue, but you could tell they're not 100% certain, and I heard a little bit of concern in Sean McVay's voice. That said, I don't think it's anything we're getting alarmed about quite yet, but definitely one of the very important narratives to monitor as we get towards the season. I mean, we're only a month out. That's not very much time for something like arm pain to subside, so we'll just have to see what happens there. Now, assuming Matt Stafford is healthy, I have to say, I mean, Cooper Kupp was on a whole nother level than we've ever seen before. And I've seen Cooper Kupp at training camp every year except for 2018. We've seen him at the Senior Bowl. I mean, we're the original Cooper Kupp truthers, loyalists, absolutists. He's dominating in a way that I can't even believe. I think it's an extension of, I mean, he went into a whole nother, not even another gear last year, 2-3 new gears last year, and really saw that show up here in training camp, much different than in years past. I mean, Cooper Kupp's always been a stud, but there was never this degree of separation between him and the rest of the guys. And as good as he's always been, I never left camp saying that the offense ran through Cooper Kupp. And I think this is what occurred in the midst of the season last year, and it truly heading into year 2 with Stafford. This thing is, it's really hard to believe how good Cooper Kupp looks. I can't imagine drafting any wide receiver in fantasy over him unless we get bad news about Stafford's throwing arm. I mean, he looks like he's going to get 1 million targets. He dominated practice. The offense actually runs through Cooper Kupp. In years past, you'd show up to camp and it'd be like a 1A, 1B situation with Robert Woods. That just simply was not the case here. The offense, he is the focal point of the Rams offense in so many ways. I'm still really in awe. Cooper Kupp, an absolute legend. Should be the first receiver drafted in fantasy, and I'm pretty much all in there this season as long as we're feeling good about Matt Stafford. Now, speaking of Robert Woods and his departure to Tennessee, we do have Allen Robinson who slid in. Looks good. I think Allen Robinson will have one of his best seasons ever, and I've been one of the more circumspect analysts when it comes to Allen Robinson. I feel like I've always had a sober view and been a little bit of a skeptic in terms of his fantasy production, as much as I like him as a person and a player. This should be one of his best seasons. He's going to get a lot of targets too, because I mean, it's an absolutely pathetic wide receiver group behind him. I mean, it's a bunch of stiffs out here with the Rams behind Allen Robinson. So while he doesn't look like he is operating at the same clip that Robert Woods has in the past, and maybe that's not a surprise. He's making a transition into this offense. He's new, so maybe that's an unreasonable expectation. I don't think that he's operating at that clip. All that said, I think he's going to get a ton of targets because the wide receiver room is so lackluster behind him. So Allen Robinson, I feel really pretty good that he'll finish as a solid wide receiver 2 this year with upside, which is certainly an aggressive thing for me to say. He's really been nothing more than a flex for most of his career. I think that changes. All that said, I still am pretty much all in on Cooper Kupp. And then when we look at the running backs, they didn't really stand out to me. Yes, Darrell Henderson's still going to be involved. He's not that good, though. I mean, it's really leaves so much to be desired in the passing game. Cam Akers looks sleek. He looks trim. Didn't really pop to me, but to be fair, running back is a difficult position to evaluate even when the pads have come on. I wasn't thrilled with the running back room or situation, but again, Akers is clearly a superior talent to Henderson. I think he's going to get a lot of touches on a good team. So he's a guy that we should definitely be interested in. I think he'll be a fine fantasy pick. But I'm not necessarily all in on Cam Akers. I do think Darrell Henderson exists still a little bit as a thorn in his side, and maybe he's a flex play in a pinch himself this year. Darrell Henderson probably should be rostered to some extent. And then, really outside of those guys, we know Van Jefferson is having another issue with his knee that's requiring a quote-unquote minor knee surgery, a cleanup. They're hoping and praying he's ready for week 1, but I think it's going to be a slow start to the season for Van Jefferson. And then, guys, the other thing that really stood out to me about Rams camp was the addition of Bobby Wagner on the defensive side of the ball. He looked like he was fitting in tremendously. He's making big plays all over the field. Sean McVay was loving it. Aaron Donald was loving it. And adding a Pro Bowl linebacker like Bobby Wagner to this Super Bowl Rams team is going to be big.